This is the second part of the Cami Kidder interview I have. Again, there are audio problems, but please ignore those. Her story is very important, and everyone should hear it. So, please, we start right where we left off. Hello, and welcome back to Stories from the Set. This is part two of the Cami Kidder interview, and we're back. Got a lot outside, so I had to close all the windows, and I had a lot of windows to close. Okay. So as you were saying, I totally forgot where you were. Oh, you just got your restraining order, and the guy was damaged, and go on.
And the film had done pretty well. It won a couple Best Documentary Awards up in Canada. I did a short version of it. I did a micro version of it that was requested for a film festival in Europe. And I'm thinking, God, this is so easy. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, is making films, because I literally had the idea in April, met this investor in June, started shooting in September, had the film done, and it was on the festival circuit in 13 months.
Wow.
And I just thought, and then all this madness happened with this guy, and just I, for the first time in my life, called my father. And I said, would you please talk to this guy and tell him to leave me alone, because he's scaring me.
Right. And especially he knows where you live. Obviously, he knows about firearms. So I can understand how that can be scary.
I mean, it was a legitimate fear. It
Right.
wasn't just like I was like, you're annoying, leave me alone.
Right.
Because I can handle you're annoying, leave me alone. But my father, being one of the greatest guys in the world, tried to be his friend. And I was like, no, you were supposed to be this badass and bring the heat and tell him, leave my daughter alone. Do that stuff like when I used to be a bad kid when I was, a teenager, and scare him. And so that didn't work. And so we got an offer of distribution. And that was really exciting, because who does that with their
Right.
first film?
Right.
And it wasn't that much money involved. I think the total, if you counted everything, money I put in and money that he put in and additional investors we brought in, I think it was maybe $85,000, which isn't very much for a feature film that is going to get distributed, even before Netflix and all that stuff and YouTube Red. And then because I am the person I am, I let them know about this situation, and they declined to go forward, because they said, look, if he is crazy enough to make up a lawsuit and sue you, he can make up one and sue us, and we'll have to pay him.
Right.
Because we have the money. And so we're just not going to. So no one's ever seen this film.
Oh, okay.
Outside of 3 audiences
Okay.
at festivals, or 6 audiences at festivals.
Wow, that's kind of... That's horrible.
It sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah. Fuck, I mean, you're right there. Your first film. You're getting distribution. I mean, that is a dream. It doesn't happen that often,
Yep.
And then fucking crazy.
This guy's got to fuck it up because he can't get laid.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to.
Right.
It had nothing to do with anything else. And the lawsuit was just a complete, I didn't handle it right, because I didn't know. I've never been
Right.
sued before.
Right.
But what I should have done is the kind of
So he
law
sued you as well.
sued me and the LLC, which he was a member of.
Okay.
The whole point of having an LLC is to protect you from, frivolous litigation and things. But he got this real estate attorney from Orange County who just took advantage of him, and he kept writing her checks. And she, when someone sues you, you have to defend yourself. That's the problem. Anybody can sue you for anything. I can make up a lawsuit and sue you tomorrow, and I'm going to make your life hell for 18 months, even if you did nothing wrong. That is the
horrible
problem
podcast, right?
with our system.
Yeah.
Yes. So we just have to, we just exist in the world that, most people are good, and they don't do that. We have to trust people. So anyway, this guy, I met with a couple of lawyers, and they wanted a ton of money, and I don't have a lot of money, and I ended up taking a job with the Marines.
Doing what?
I ran their training scenarios. out at 29 Palms.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we'd populate a village,
Uh-huh.
mostly with people who thought they were in a movie because they were extras and they did all hiring all wrong. But basically, it was to run the battalions that were about to go into Iraq and
Okay.
Afghanistan through scenarios so they would be better prepared.
Right.
So we created a scenario where they were invited to join a soccer game. What are they going to do? We created scenarios where we would blow up a Humvee with a IED, and what are they going to do? Are they going to investigate? Are they going to get out of town? Are they going to dress their? What are they going to do? And
My question is, when you say we're going to blow up a Humvee, do they give you a Humvee to blow up?
well, I actually almost got my 3 card out of this because I worked with the explosive techs. I was the only female bomber.
Okay.
And I used to trigger the device. They'd come rolling through with their Humvees, and then I would ignite the device on the side of the road. And there were instructor controllers that would tell them what happened.
Oh, okay. I
Okay,
get
so
it.
this guy's dead. This guy's got his leg blown off, and what are you going to do? And sometimes they would search the village and look for the perpetrator, and sometimes they would just get the hell out of town. And so this job didn't pay tons, but
Right.
it was super demanding, and I felt like I was doing something. Like, however you think about the Middle East and war and whatever, less people dying by mistakes is a good thing, I thought. So that's what I was
agree.
involved in. And so I was funding this lawsuit. And I probably shouldn't say this part but anyway, this all was happening in the middle of this. And the Marines got to be really good friends of mine. And a couple of them took me aside one day and said, you know what? We can fix this problem for you. We belong to the biggest gang in the world. And I was like, they're like, just have them meet you somewhere. Just tell us where it's going to be. It's a big desert.
Wow.
And to this
Wow.
day, this fucker has no idea that he's alive because I'm a good person.
Wow.
And
Big desert. That's really.
they're like,
got me floored.
they each did 2 and 3 tours. They're like, we're not fucking scared of this guy. He's messing up your life, and we're your friends, and we'll just take care of this problem. Scary as hell. I mean, and I am very proud of the fact that I didn't even hesitate, but I think about it sometimes. Not that I would have made a different decision, or that they would have done anything, because they're 24-year-old guys trying to impress me, and this kind of thing. But it was like one of those moments where you're like, wow, this kind of thing only happens in movies, doesn't it? Because this is crazy what's happening right now. So anyway, a demur, that was the word I was looking for before. So a demur is when you hire a lawyer to get the lawsuit thrown out because it's baseless. It's expensive, but the money's all up front. That's what I should have done, because his lawsuit was baseless. I didn't do that because I thought, well, I'm going to win. I didn't do anything wrong. I took your money, like I said I would. I made a film. I made a better film than any of us thought we were going to make. And you're fucking it up. So stop it, and you'll get your money back. It just made so much sense to me. And of course, the courts are going to agree. And of course, 18 months later, and all my savings.
Almost 2 years.
And this lawyer I had just kept billing me for stuff. I finally had to say, stop working. I don't have any more money. And the bills kept coming. The guy took me to court. The guy took me to arbitration to get his money. I was like, I told you to stop working. I don't have the money for this. And he's like, well, I guess you're just going to have to give him the film then. I'm like, no, it's my film. Don't you understand how copyright law works? I made this movie. He was under the impression that he had paid for it, so he owned it, because his lawyer had told him that. And I'm like, well, your lawyer is an idiot, because that's not how copyright law works. Anyway. So this went on for like 2005, 2006. Nobody's ever seen the movie. I thought last year, maybe I should revisit that film again, because it was good, and it was fun, and it was informative, and people got to tell their stories. And
Would you edit it different?
I think what I would do is go back to those people and see if anybody got out of storage. Just kind of revisit and be like, this is you then, this is you now. Like, how's your life different?
Like
What's
when
going
Ken Burns
on?
added onto baseball.
Exactly. And then I thought, what if he's still out there? What if he's lurking around? What if he's monitoring my social media? What if he's, and I just thought, He's been quiet for a long. He could be dead for all I know. I mean, because he was not a well person. But I didn't want to take the chance to wake that up again because it was such an awful part of my life. And nobody should ever have to feel that way over making a movie.
No, definitely not.
I mean, it just it frustrates and galls me and sickens me and just like every emotion that you can imagine because it's unfair.
I can hear it. It just like the frustration, the like I have to go through shit just to fucking, just to fuck, I understand.
And if I'd been a man, or if I'd been ugly, or if I had been in some way unappealing, would he have just never invested at all and I never would have made the movie? Or certainly this would have not have happened to me. Did it happen to me because I'm a woman? It kind of feels that way.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a choice here. We can continue on with the podcast because it's pretty clip. My clock's a little fast, or we can kind of just like wrap it up with that. Or...
Well, I can probably move my car because the other side of the street will be open.
Okay.
Because it's 11 to 2 is the street cleaning. So if you want to keep talking.
Yeah, let's keep talking.
If you think you've got...
And we're back. We took care of the parking situation. We're going to continue on with this. So, back to not wanting to wake up that beast again. That must be a very frustrating thing to know that just so you can feel safe, you can't revisit or do something with that film.
It's a pretty messed up thing, I have to say, and I think it's harder on me as an individual because I've always been independent and I've always been self-possessed and I've always had a great deal of confidence, and to have to second guess myself and be like, what did I do? Because I really honestly don't believe I led this guy on. I don't believe I did anything inappropriate or even, with the suggestion. I really don't think I did. But even if I had, I still did what I said I was going to do, which was make this film. Right. And he shouldn't have had any great expectations of what the film would be because he knew I'd never made a film before and I'd never been to film school. I was just an actress who was frustrated. And so the whole thing was not like life is supposed to be fair, but it was just so patently unfair. And so the 10-year anniversary of this film is come and gone. So I'm like, well, maybe when I'm a big famous director, they'll do a retrospective of my films and people will get to see this film then. Because, I mean, still one of the best moments of my life was, it was a festival in Canada, in Victoria. And they treated me so great. Like they asked me to speak on a panel about the future of film festivals, and if I would go to a school and give like a mini clinic. And the teacher said to me, she goes, we're starting a filmmaking module, and we were only going to do scripted films because that's all I had experience with. But now we're going to do documentary films because you came and talked to us about documentaries. And I feel like there were like 40 kids in that room, and maybe somebody's going to be a documentary filmmaker because I went there.
Wow.
And I said, this is a really cool thing and this is how you do it. And they were all like, yeah, And then they had me on the CBC radio. My screening sold out and they moved it to a bigger theater.
Wow.
And every person deserves to have that glory moment. So whether it's the athletic moment we talked about earlier, or it's as a filmmaker moment, to pull up to a theater in a car that they sent for you, and you're staying at the Fairmont Empress, which is where the Queen stays when she's in town, and brings you to the screening, and you see 250 people lined up on a red carpet to see your movie? Damn.
Probably no better feeling in the world, I can imagine. You probably can't even express the amount of emotions you go through. Joy is not a good enough word, I'm guessing.
And that everyone stayed for the Q&A and people were engaged, and I'm like, I did this. And then all this other stuff happened where that all got, it didn't get taken away because I still have that. I can still feel that. And he was not a part of that. And he does not get to take that away from me. But the fact that that didn't happen at other festivals, it didn't happen when the film premiered on, you know, HBO or wherever it would have gone. And again, it was just so short-sighted of him because now he gets nothing. You're not going to get your money back because I can't make any money with this project. You're not going to have an award show red carpet moment because you've ruined that. And all because you wanted to date me? It just like, it doesn't even seem to compare. I mean, how many relationships really work out?
Right.
Like I've dated maybe not hundreds. I've been alive a long time. I've been dating for a while. You know, it just seemed so just petty and small and just messed up. Like it doesn't even, there's nothing logical about what he did. And, you know, I went to California Lawyers for the Arts and they were going to moderate or mediate the dispute and try to get us to a good place. And then his lawyer got involved and told him to not go and to cancel it because that was her cash cow. She did everything to him that he's accusing me of doing. Wow. She stole his money. You know, I just like, oh, what kind of person are you that she worked for some, you know, generic firm in Orange County, and then all of a sudden halfway through this lawsuit, I'm getting fancy letterhead with her name on it. She opened her own shingle on his back and he doesn't even see it. She is who you should be mad at, not me. I actually did what I said I would do. So yeah, I've kind of, it took me a long time to realize just how much this fucked me in the head because I didn't create. It stopped everything because I felt like I needed to go to ground and recover and see if it was safe and check around and move. And all of these things. And then, of course, she, stupid ass lawyer, put my new address on the legal documents. So now he knows where I moved to. She was, oh, I hate that woman. I just really do not wish good things for this woman. Because she was just so nasty and just didn't get it, you know? And you would think a woman should go, hey, maybe I should help another woman and help my client see reason here. But no, she was just in it for the money grab. And she didn't care about me. And she didn't care about him. But she'd convinced him that she did. And whatever. So maybe they got married. Maybe they're very happy together. I don't know. But, so this was 2006. We finally got this monkey caged. And it's now 2018. And I have been working on my next film since 2010.
Wow.
So much for it being easy and that this being my thing that I'm supposed to do with my life because, and I went to graduate school. So 2006, and I think part of my healing process is I started taking classes at LACC, which is a phenomenal, I wouldn't say it's like best film school in the world, but it's a phenomenal value.
I just want to say one thing about LACC. I think it was in the Hollywood Reporter. They listed the top 25 film schools in the United States. And at number 26, honorable mention, LACC. So I could technically say that not only did I get more bang for my buck at film school, I went to one of the top 26 film schools in all the United States, according to the...
Because, you know, this industry is really not about degrees. It's about
I think
your story.
Give a fuck about degrees, actually.
it's what kind of story you talk. Can you do the job? And that is one of the things that LACC I think is great about is it's like a technical college. It teaches you how to do the job. You can take the grip class, you can learn about what a grip does, and then you can go apply for jobs as a grip. And if you can get one, you can show them you can do it, and then you get more jobs. That's what college should be.
Right.
You know, instead of, you know, getting a philosophy degree and what are you going to do with that, you know? Exactly. sit around and think and maybe write and maybe go back to school. And
Start your own
but
philosophy.
yeah, so I went to LACC and I just kind of took all the stuff because I'm like, well, clearly I don't know everything. I, made some short films there.
Ralph
and
Mendez. That was his first name. Ralph.
He was not a fan of Cami J. Kidder. He gave me my only B because my sister got married in Thailand and I had to miss 3 classes.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you're just so stuck on rules and like, these are the rules, then, I'm one of the best students you've ever had, and I help other people.
Did you learn how to tie the bowline knot behind your back?
Bowling knot. I directed a commercial. I built an apple box. I did, even though grips don't build apple boxes,
We had to build one anyway. Did you build the dolly?
No.
No, you only took the class once. Cause,
Once was enough.
Because if you take the class twice, you got an apple box and a skateboard dolly out of it.
All right.
Yeah. I have some parts around here somewhere.
So, so I thought, what was it, $43 a credit or something, which,
Yeah.
I will tell people if you want to go to film school, then you should go to film school. But if you want to make films, you should just make films because AFI is $85,000 a year and it's not even a degree. People go there, people go to USC, people go to UCLA for film, I think because of the connections that you might make. And I don't know. Because I chose the independent route, there's sort of that decision point where you have to make, you're like, do I want to be a cog in the wheel or do I want to just do my own thing? But then you're responsible for doing everything. It's great because then you can make all your own choices, but it's bad because you have to figure out how to pay for insurance,
Right. That's exactly the reason why I started this podcast, because as much as I love film, and I do love it, it's the only job I've ever had where the night before we're going to start filming, I can't sleep because I'm ready to
It's Christmas.
Yes, it's Christmas the next day. We're going to get on the set. We're going to build some shit. We're going to do the lighting. But the freelancing and I'm when you meet me, I'm a good people person. I can carry on a conversation with you, and I think I win people over. But keeping in contact with those people when they're not in front of me makes it very difficult. I'm just not that person who makes those monthly phone calls of like, hey, what's going on? Let's hang out. Oh, what are you doing? Blah blah. I'm just not. It's just not me. So this is why I started podcasting. I'm like, get yourself a job that's going to be steady, part-time, so you can do this. So I understand, I don't want to be a piece in that cog anymore either. And there's other things that I want to explore. And I'm glad that I have this so I can talk to you, so I can learn. And this has been a real learning experience for me because I don't get to talk to that many people or that many women for an extended period of time about what they go through in this industry. Being on, because you're not in front of the camera. Well, you were in front of the camera. But you're not in front of them. But behind the scenes, all the stuff that goes on. And I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, no, and it's hard no matter, I think, what job. I met a woman who was the only female camera operator on Life Below Zero.
Oh, really?
So that show that shoots up in Greenland or something. And she was just talking about just the issues that people create. Because there aren't any issues, it's like, well, does she have to have her own tent and because she's a woman, and doesn't she have a roommate, and that's not fair, and it's like, it's not really an issue, I mean, it's not like you need your own suite at the Ritz, right. That's not really, people create problems. But then she would say then there were those sort of machismo ones that were like, oh, well, let me carry your camera for you and stuff. She's like, I can carry my own camera. But then they're like, well, you don't have to be such a bitch about it. And she's like, I'm not being a bitch. I'm doing my job. I'm a camera operator. It is my job to carry the camera. I don't need your help.
And I don't. And the reaction of "don't be such a bitch." That's on him. But I don't think uh, I I probably worked with one female gaffer. Yeah, I've only worked with one female gaffer, and uh, when it came to like moving stuff around, because we were a small crew, it was just her. I was the key grip, and and when it came to moving equipment, I was like, "Oh, let me get that for you." And she didn't get frustrated with me, but she was just like, "I got it." And then I think after like the second or third time I asked her, I finally, got it in my head. She doesn't need my help. She knows how to do this. Stop asking and just fucking treat her like you would somebody else.
Right. And it's hard because, again, how we're socialized.
Right.
Men are socialized to think that they are masculine and strong and that women are weak and they need to be taken care of. And it's hard for a woman to kind of navigate that because she doesn't want to be a jerk, but she needs to stand her ground. And what if she just said all the time, yeah, okay, you can carry the heavy stuff. Is she going to get hired again? No.
Right. No.
And so it's like you're really it's not an impossible situation, but it just adds layers
Right.
of complication to all you want to do is your job.
Right.
And I'm sure it's the same if you're a female airline pilot or if you're a male flight attendant. I'm sure there's a biased gender roles thing that happens there. I'm not saying only happens to women, but it does predominantly happen to women. And in this industry, which is looked at, I mean, it's very white, male, and straight.
Yeah, I'll agree with you with that. There's a lot of, and I don't know if it's just like other groups don't feel like they have an opportunity or how do they do it or anything like that. But yeah, a lot of white guys in this business.
Yeah, and white guys know white guys, and you hire your friends. It's a friend's business. So you're not necessarily going to sit around and be like, we've already got 4 white guys. I could really use a Latin guy on this shoot. Because it doesn't matter that he's Latin, because
Right.
he's just adjusting the lights or whatever the job is. But we don't think, gee, it might be nice to be more inclusive. You know?
I have a friend, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but it really ties into what we're talking about. I have a friend who he is a producer in a First AC, and he always, or I met another girl who does the same job, and he knows, they know of each other on Facebook, but he's always giving shout outs to like the guys and never to her, and she's like brought it up to him I think once, and I'm like, oh, should I talk to him? She's like, no, you don't have to talk to him. I can handle myself. I'm like, okay, well, I just thought it'd be like, I don't think she was being rude, but she's like, I can, if I need to talk to Constantine and bring it up again, I will. Oop. You're gonna have to edit that out.
Delete. Well, yeah, and it's a tricky thing for you because you think, well, would I have made the same offer if she was a male friend? Maybe you would, because you're like, hey, this doesn't seem to be fair.
Oh, because
and this
I
one
know.
guy is not
Right.
this one guy is not being highlighted, and maybe I should be like, hey, do you have a problem with Doug?
Right.
Because you never seem to mention him, but it becomes more heightened.
Right.
And there's more onus on her, and there's more, so it just becomes more complicated than it really needs to be. If people could just really be, more gender neutral,
Right.
which is kind of an interesting.
I try and be as general. I honestly do. I try and be
Right.
as gender neutral as possible when I interact with.
I think it's less important to have. That's not the way I want to say it. So diversity behind the camera, right? That you don't see. That's not necessarily creative development.
Right.
I'm not saying it's not creative, like sound department isn't creative, but it doesn't really matter if a woman is a sound mixer or a
Right.
man is a sound mixer. They're just a sound mixer, and they're going to run the equipment the same way. But a writer, a female perspective, a black perspective, it brings something different to the. It's same thing with directing, same thing with camera operation.
Like,
It changes. It can change the.
I think a good example of that, and I'm sure you saw you probably took the class. Lenny Riefenstahl. Yeah, she was a German
But you definitely saw in those 1930 whatever films that she was filming with a female eye, that and she was getting things that I personally as a man wouldn't have like put into those type of, I guess you can call them documentarian films, you know what I mean? So
Right.
and yeah, so and we were taught that, I think, specifically because you need to recognize that a female is going to look at the same thing that you are in a different way, and that might work to your advantage.
It could enrich the
Yeah,
project.
enrich the project. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you saw The Zookeeper's Wife, almost all female crew. They strove to have at least 50% female crew, like their stunt coordinator and their camera operators and their producers and the director. And
Do you think it needs to? Do you think projects like that need to exist, or do they help push forward that, you know, I don't throw like a girl, like it says. Do you know what I mean?
right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we're actually got to ask a question at this forum because they showed the movie, and then we had Nikki, who was the director, and people on the panel, and you could write out a card and send it up. And my question was, because I had read numerous interviews, and all women will always say, I don't think about being a woman. I just thinking about doing the best job that I can do. Or we didn't hire her because she was a woman. We hired her because she was the best stunt coordinator. And I said, that's fine, but nothing has changed in 100 years. So don't we need to start hiring women because they're women? And the director it was funny because she was she took the question and she was kind of like, well, until very recently, I would have said no, but now I'm like, yeah, the needle is not moving. So what I would really like to see, I would like to see a bold studio and have them say, you know what? We understand that we're not being very inclusive here and that less than 4% of studio pictures are directed by women. So we're making a pledge that in 2 years, 10% of our films will be directed by women. And in the next year, 20% and 30% until we get to 50%. Because like Ruth Bader Ginsburg says, you know, how many women should there be on the Supreme Court? 9. And people are like, 9? And she's like, it's always been 9 men. Why couldn't it be 9 women? Why shouldn't it be 9 women? Why is that so radical? Why shouldn't 50% of movies be directed by women? We're 50% of the population. It seems like this huge, big, oh my God, but why not? You know, when people just calm down and realize that there's not a finite number of movies that are made every year. It's not like there's 200 movies that ever get made each year, and that if 50% are directed by women, then that means 50% of the men who have been working are no longer working. It's not pie. It doesn't work like that. It's not a zero-sum game. You can create more projects to encourage and promote and accept more women. And it's not just directors. You know, cinematographers, one of the biggest problems that women have getting into that field was that the first job in the camera department used to be the loader. And you had to be able to lift the heavy film canisters and load them into the camera. Well, if you weren't a big enough person, that whole avenue was closed off to you because you couldn't do job 1. You couldn't do physically step 1 on the ladder. And so you couldn't do step 2 or 3 or 4. You could not advance in that field. But now it's different because we don't load film canisters like that anymore. You know, it's a card that fits in your pocket. So it should have changed on its own organically, but it hasn't. So we need to change it. I really think. And so if that studio, let's just say it's Warner Brothers, says by 2020, 10% of our films are going to be directed by women, I'm going to support Warner Brothers. As a woman, I'm going to be like, you're my favorite studio. I'm going to go see everything that you produce. And there's a lot of women like me that would do the same thing. We need somebody who's bold enough to see the potential in why this would be a good dollars and cents decision, as well as the morally right thing to do. You know, because they always say with women's sports, they're like, nobody cares about women's sports. Nobody watches women's sports. There's no money in women's sports. Like, how do you know? because you've never put women's baseball on television. So how do you know if people would watch it or not? You can't just say, "Ooh, my crystal ball, I've just decided that people in general," because people certainly care about women's sports during the Olympics. They care just as much about women's sports as they do about men's sports because you're giving it to them. They're tuning in because it's on. If you don't put it on, you can't say nobody cares about it.
I can agree with that because although when they had the Women's World Cup here in the United States, not too long ago, I think it was the last one.
Soccer?
Soccer, yeah, soccer. I watched as many games as I could because it's soccer. I find soccer interesting, but I like to see. Well, it was great for the United States because when you see the women play, you see how dominant they are. The women's United States team, you see how dominant they are. So I like watching them play. They have great play. They have great players. So I watched a lot. I watched a lot of those games. I forgot where I was going. And they're more successful than the men's. They've won several World Cups, but they couldn't. The U.S. Soccer Association said, "Oh, you guys can play on artificial turf.
We don't need to pay you the same.
We don't need to pay you the same. We don't need to give you grass like we would for the sod for the new field for every game for men." And I thought, you know what? They're the most successful team that you have, and you're treating them like second-class citizens. They've brought 2 World Cups to they took soccer, women's soccer, out of the Olympics because the U.S. was so dominant. It's
pretty messed up, right?
pretty messed up.
And that's an example, but this is how it is for women all the time, whatever the thing is. We have to be better, and yet it's still not enough. So with this baseball movie that I've been working on, I followed a team of 11-year-old girls because they played through a full tournament season of USSSA. So it's travel ball, not Little League. And they are, this month the tournament's in Denver, and this month it's in Vegas. And they were the only all-girls team playing in this age bracket in this tournament season.
Were they fielded that way on purpose, or
Yeah,
okay.
their parents, they played for a pilot program that was started by Baseball for All, which is Justine Siegel's organization, and she specifically focuses on 12-year-old girls, and because it's such that pivotal age. Right. And so she put this team together and then took them to a tournament in Cooperstown, and they finished, I don't know, in the 20s out of 100 teams. It's great. Yeah. And then their parents said, "We think these girls are really good. They want to keep playing together. We're going to keep them together." So that's why it was a 13U. The next year they played this tournament season. So I'm following them because I'm fascinated and I love it, and I love success, and I love to see people challenge expectations but every time they showed up at a tournament, people lost their minds.
Really?
How dare, because I've got, my camera with my shotgun mic and my headphones. I can hear people losing their minds, and hopefully the sound didn't travel too much onto the field, but these girls have to be a particular type of girl, right? They have to be able to withstand the scrutiny and not lose their cool and not cry and not get hurt, and all of these things, all these expectations that we have of girls, like why they shouldn't be here. And they have to surpass all of them. And then they, I'm just deciding whether or not to reveal the ending because it's going to be in the movie. So I'm not revealing. But basically the upshot was that people's opinion was, unless they won the World Series, which they have at the end of the tournament season, then they didn't belong there. I'm like, what about the other 29 teams of boys? If they're not number one, then they don't belong there?
Right.
Nobody says that.
Right.
about the number 5th place boys team. We're like, oh, you'll get them next year, work a little harder. If the girls finished 7th, they still beat 24 team, 20, no math, 20, whatever.
Right. They beat a lot of guys.
They beat a lot of guys. And what should happen is those coaches and those parents should talk to those boys and say, that was pretty cool. You played against a team of girls and they beat you because they were a better team, not because they were girls and they don't belong here and they shouldn't have shown you up like that, and all the things that was being said about this girls' team distracting the boys and just interrupting what the baseball tournament was about, and all these things, all this pressure was put on these girls, and they had to take all that flack on top of it. And I tell you, it hurts me to say it, but the number one group of people that was complaining about the girls on the field were the mothers of the boys.
But, and what do you think of the insult? Oh, it's an insult for a guy to be beaten by a woman, isn't it?
Only if he thinks so.
But I'm just saying it's used as
But
an
that's,
insult, isn't it?
and
It's
you're
used as
calling your team sissies. Girls, come on, ladies, work harder. You throw like a girl, you kick like a girl, you hit like a girl. All those things are meant to say being a girl is bad. That's what it's saying. You're not good if you're a girl, which that's a pretty fucked up thing to be teaching 10-year-old boys. That they grew up their whole life thinking they're superior to girls because they've been told not to be like a girl, because that's bad. That's the messed up thing, like people write me stories and it's amazing, because I've been in this world for so long making this film. And like this woman told me, she goes, yeah, I saw this like grandson, 3, 4 years old, and his grandfather was tossing him balls and he was like swinging and he's screaming at him to stop swinging like a girl. And she says, I really had to debate. Like me with the harem pants lady. I think I need to say something here. Here's a real moment. You may not realize what you are doing. Mm-hmm. So I just thought I might point it out to you. And of course, he didn't take it well and told her mind her own business. But it's like, if we could all just become a little more aware, because words matter and they matter so much more with kids. And when you tell boys that girls don't belong on the baseball field, you're telling them that their dreams are more important than girls' dreams, that they have a domain that belongs to only them, that girls are not allowed in, and all these things, and they carry that forward through their whole lives. And that's why they don't think anything's wrong about not having a woman on the board of directors, or not having a woman on the film set or anything like that, because they have been taught that girls don't belong certain places. And that's what's so damaging to society, because then you've got all these perspectives and all this experience and all this, women are really good at things that men are not good at, like communication. Women tend to be better at expressing their feelings. Boys are told not to have feelings. They're told not to cry, not to get upset, and they got to bury all that stuff. Well, that's fucking them up, because how are they going to have an adult relationship if they can't express their feelings and say, I'm feeling this today? I mean, as corny as that sounds to put it that way, but if they're not allowed to have feelings because they're boys, that's as messed up for them as it is telling girls they don't belong somewhere. And we do it every day. And we all do it.
This isn't the topic of your next documentary, is it? I mean, it's to compare both of them apples and oranges.
Well, I mean, Throw Like a Girl is the name of my documentary.
Right.
And it's sort of like people reclaiming a word, that it's, I was selling the shirts at a fundraiser, and these, kind of chucklehead guys come by and they're making fun, right? And the guy's like, ooh, I should get you this shirt. He goes, could you throw like a girl? Or he goes, oh no, if I wore that shirt, I'd have to throw like a girl, right? I said, well, if you get to the gym and work out, maybe you could.
That's a good comeback.
And his friends gave him so much, and I said, it's not the point that I want to ridicule you.
Right.
But sometimes you just have to jar people and say, stop saying stupid, outdated, sexist crap that you're not even conscious of thinking. You're just going for the cheap joke or going for the trope. Evolve. just think a little differently, and so we're hoping that, with the film, we'll get people to question these things. Yes, we're using baseball specifically because baseball is the only sport that there is not a girl equivalent. Softball is not baseball. Where if you look at every other sport, except for football, which there aren't.
I think, believe it or not, I think there is a female. Well, yeah, I think there is a female semi-pro league or something like that, where women actually do play against each other. And then there was that one guy, I can't remember, some guy with a lot of money wanted to do a women's bikini football league.
Right. Well, in Australia, they have the lingerie league, and and women are playing real football, but they're playing it in nighties,
Right.
Because that's how we get men to show up to these things. And those women are probably like, you know what? Fuck it. I get to play football for a living, and so I'll put on the lingerie. But it's not always going to be that way. I'm hoping that will evolve, just like with a league of their own. The All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, the first thing they did, they put them in skirts, and they only hired pretty women. And they did it because they thought that's how we're going to sell. That's our novelty. That's how we're going to sell tickets. And I've talked to several women, who are in the film and that have been just so frustrated by the fact that they're not hired because they're a woman, or they're offered, a stint on an independent league team to be the publicity stunt, right? Because we'll sell tickets. We'll have a women in baseball night, and we'll hire you for a 3-day contract, and we'll have you pitch, and we'll sell a lot of tickets and maybe some T-shirts. And they don't want to do it. And of course they don't want to do it. Who wants to be a sideshow? You want to be a baseball pitcher. You don't want to be, the show pony. And I'll say to them, obviously everything is your decision. But if you do it, I'll film it. But also, you're only a sideshow until you prove you belong there. If that's what gets you through the door, maybe do it. If it's only for 3 days.
I would be honest, I'm not gonna lie to you. If I knew, like, let's say a female pitcher, a woman was pitching a ball to like a major leaguer, I'd go to that. I'd go see that. I'd go see that because I want to see, I don't know, I want to see it for the spectacle. I want to
see something you haven't seen.
Yeah.
And maybe she'll get shelled, and maybe she'll strike him out, and maybe like Jackie Mitchell striking out Babe Ruth, they'll question it for eternity if it was real. I don't know. I mean, baseball was kind of different back then. Maybe they offered him $500 to let this girl strike him out as a publicity stunt. Maybe he had enough ego that he thought he didn't even have to try. Or maybe there's no way he would go along with the stunt. We don't know.
Right.
But it happened, and she struck out the lineup, and then Major League Baseball freaked out because somebody was going to offer a contract, and then they put in their charter that, no women could have professional contracts. And
Really? She was playing okay, so I just thought this was a publicity stunt. Let me get this right.
She's 17.
17. Okay, explain it to me how the whole thing, because I thought, I'm like, oh, Babe Ruth went out and somebody struck him out. So explain that to me. That's very interesting.
Well, again, it's far back in the history, and so it's all kind of hearsay. But there are people that believe she legitimately struck out.
Okay, now who is this? Explain who the woman is and the situation, how it came about, or what you know of it.
So Jackie Mitchell had always played baseball. I think her dad ran a local team, a town team or something, and she played with her brothers, just like most women did. And I think it was one of these, the Babe Ruth and I can't remember the other. It was like the most fearsome three in the Yankees lineup, DiMaggio and.
They were. No, Ruth was way before DiMaggio. It was probably.
Oh, the one Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig, yeah, that's who you're thinking of.
Yeah, so they arranged this sort of exhibition game, right? And she was supposed to pitch to them, and she ended up striking all three of them out.
Oh, wow.
Now, what is very likely is she threw off-speed pitches that they weren't used to seeing, and maybe they just like tried to swing and they missed, and she legitimately struck them out. If it had been a real game and they'd faced her again in the next inning or the inning after that, maybe they would have hit her because they would have seen what she has, you know. But that's exactly what you were talking about earlier, of how Major League Baseball can integrate women into their roster and become, you know, so if you've got, you know, throwing 100 is the big thing, right? Oh,
Right.
it's throwing 100, throwing 100. And then you bring in a woman that throws 75. Whoa, you know, I mean, maybe you're going to get some guys out, and maybe it's only going to work for the first three batters or something, but that you've done your job.
I don't know, wicked slider and a wicked curve.
You know,
Get the best of them
left-handed
out.
curveball, you know, so anyway, yeah, so Jackie Mitchell pitched against the Yankees in 1931, and it was Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, and I can't remember the third guy. And then there was apparently some rumblings about, well, maybe we should sign her to a contract. And Major League Baseball sort of interceded, and they did it with another woman too later. She was in the 50s. And they actually gave her a contract.
Oh, really?
And Major League Baseball canceled the contract and said women are banned from professional baseball.
Wow.
So this has been going on since there's been baseball. You know, one of the most fascinating things is that women actually invented the game. If you believe most historians, it's not Abner Doubleday.
Well, we all
know that.
the Abner Doubleday is a whole fictitious thing. I think he was like somewhere else at the time that they said he invented, like I don't like at West Point or something like that. But anyway, so according to the Ken Burns documentary, baseball came out of this game that they played called Town Ball, which I don't know if you saw the Ken documentary.
I've seen it. Yeah. No, he's awesome, but
Yeah.
it's hard to always stay awake because it's so long.
Yeah, he definitely goes into detail. Like I tried to do jazz. I'm not a jazz fan, but I'm like, oh, Ken Burns jazz. I fell asleep. Like, oh, you made jazz boring. Okay.
Well, I think it's the narration
Yeah.
that gets me. Is it's so metered and you know, it's not there's not a lot of levels in it. It's
He's
sort
definitely got a style.
of like a meditation. But yeah, so Abner Doubleday did not invent baseball. What I've read is that there were milkmaids in the Highlands of Scotland in the 17th century, in between milkings, needed something to do. They're just hanging out in the field, and they set up their stools and made bases, and they had this really soft, puffy ball and a paddle, and it was called stool ball. And like they didn't have gloves and stuff, and if you wanted to get the runner out, you would hit the runner with the ball. But it basically is considered to be the progenitor of all stick and ball sports. So cricket finds its roots there because of the way cricket is batted and the way there's that wicket and stuff. So that's what that's what.
Wow. Okay. I thought
I'm not saying everyone
Right.
agrees, but that's
Right.
what a lot of people think happened is these women were trying to come up with something to do, and so they sort of invented this original oh, sorry. So they invented this new game. Now, of course, who knows who really invented the game and how it evolved and stuff, but that's one of the stories. But even so say like organized baseball really started in like the late 1800s. That was when men wanted something to be their job that used to be a schoolyard game that was played for exercise and fun. So suddenly it has to be masculine and manly and the tremendous sport of baseball. And that's when women started getting shoved out of the sport. But they always played. They played on the town teams because, these are towns with, farm families, and they've got 8 or 10 kids, and you just always play together because boys and girls played together and boys and girls work in the field, and it's always been that. Back then that was how it was, and whoever were the best players or the players that owned the equipment got to play on the team. So in the turn of the century time, the Bloomer Girls started, which was for like 30 years. Teams of women barnstormed around the country playing baseball.
Really?
And very often they would have a male pitcher and catcher. And then if they played men's teams, they would swap batteries. And so they had, but it wasn't a sideshow. It wasn't vaudeville, like also happened in that time frame where it was really the blondes and the brunettes dressing up and playing a silly game of baseball for entertainment. But, professional sports are entertainment. So there needs to be that component. But anyway, just always been around the game. Effa Manley owned one of the Negro League teams, and she was a civil rights leader, and she changed conditions for the players, and she's the only woman who's ever been inducted into the Cooperstown Hall of Fame.
Wow, that's interesting.
And you don't have to be a player, obviously. You can be an owner or a broadcaster, but no women other than Effa Manley, because of just how amazing she was. So another part of the film is to kind of deal with this history a little bit, because people don't know. So the girls trying to play today are not rule breakers or troublemakers or trying to make a feminist statement. They're just trying to play a game that they love, which we've always played. And this lack of historical memory, I think, is what contributes to people freaking out when girls show up in the baseball field. What are they doing here? They don't belong here. Yeah, they do. Because they've always been here, and girls' dreams are just as valid as boys' dreams.
I know. Speaking of this, I've heard talk of the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts like just combining, because a lot of girls prefer what they're taught in the Boy Scouts, and they don't want to they don't want a cooking merit badge, or they don't want a sewing merit badge. They want a wood carving merit badge, or a leatherworking merit badge, or a survival merit badge. And when I was in the Boy Scouts, they were really I think they were integrating girls as early as the 70s, but I didn't see any. I didn't see any in the 70s. You know what I mean? It wasn't until the 80s where I actually saw girls in
Well, the
Boy
biggest
Scout troop.
the biggest difference with scouting is where you can go with it. So everyone knows what an Eagle Scout is,
Right.
and they're universally loved and adored and
Right.
revered. There is no girl equivalent.
Really?
In the Girl Scouts, there's something called the Gold Award, which my older sister Lori actually achieved, but nobody talks about it. Nobody knows about it because it's the girls' version of that. An Eagle Scout is something you look at that and you're like, I would, trust. They're congressmen, they're generals, they're Air Force pilots. There's a cachet that comes along with being an Eagle Scout that girls do not get to have. Because if you can't grow up in the Boy Scouts and go on that track, then it's not an option. So that's really what the push is now. Plus, I'm sure that their participation is declining, just like, older institutions have to reinvent themselves. And so it was actually a young woman named Sydney Ireland who really put this push through to say, my brother's an Eagle Scout. I want to be an Eagle Scout. I know what it's all about. Why are you not letting me? And she and her family have been pretty relentless.
So they'll allow girls to be in a Boy Scout troop, but they won't allow them to become Eagle Scouts?
It might be something like it's okay when they're in Cub Scouts, but it's not okay at a certain age because, again, with the puberty and the boobs,
and
people
having
lose
to
their
camp
mind.
out together?
Yeah, people lose their minds. So I think that's where the divide happens. Like, it's fine, if you're in Cub Scouts, but once there's gender differences between boys and girls,
Well, we've been talking for quite a long
we
time.
have.
I don't think I've ever. Well, this will probably be my longest podcast. In 2 parts, I think. I think I'm gonna have to do it in 2 parts. But I want to thank you for coming on. I want to say that you've taught me something. I mean, I've learned some lessons on my own, but I really feel like you really taught me something today. I feel very informed. I feel embarrassed for past actions. Not really.
Yeah. Can't be embarrassed by the past.
But I want to thank you for being on here. I hope that when I finally air this, that people will take a look and really hear what you have to say. You're not, because, and I'm gonna continue on here for a second, because what I hear a lot. I'm gonna give you an example of of something that happened to me recently. So I joined a Burning Man group, and I went to my first Burning Man festival at a local park. It's right below Dodger Stadium. I think it's called LA Historical Park. And I just asked, what should I expect? What tips can you give me for a noob, someone who's never experienced that? I put my phone away and didn't think about it. I came back and there were 64 replies. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of replies. This is a very friendly group. 39 of them were under this one woman's post saying, her initial post is like, watch out, strangers are going to hug you, and blah, 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 blah. And a little bit later, she says, well, I shouldn't have to, because they ask you if you want to get hugged. People ask you, would you like a hug? As you're walking into any event, they'll ask you for a hug. And she's like, I shouldn't be required to opt out. I should be able to opt in. And then I'm like, okay. And I read down a little further, and she was equating being asked for a hug to sexual assault. And I think that that's an extreme, but I hear stuff like that from, let's call them social justice warriors. I mean, that's for their name. I hear that extreme point of view of like, when you're out on a date, you got to ask for consent and ask for consent and ask for consent. If she is drunk, she can't give consent because she's inebriated. And I think that when men say, "Oh, it's scary to be a man nowadays," it's because they hear stuff like that. It's because it's like you're not, because of the alcohol, she can't give consent because she feels bad the next morning, for being like that. And I'm glad that there are women like you out there who are saying, look, I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want to be treated like you. And I think your voice sometimes gets lost with stuff like that.
I actually have tremendous empathy for men, because women's roles and women's expectations and women's desires have changed so much really quickly, and nobody's talking to the men. Again, it goes back to that socialization of little boys. If we're telling them they can't have feelings and they can't express themselves because that's not manly, you're talking to a 10-year-old. He should be able to cry and be upset and tell you what's wrong. And if he skins his knee, then that's okay, that hurts. Because when you chop off someone's emotions, then they're not going to be able to handle them well as an adult. And that's where I think a lot of, misperceptions come in, and confusion and anger. I think a lot of men are very angry. I think a lot of women are very angry. And it's this lack of communication, that we have because of all the things that we have sort of been force-fed. You go to other countries and it's different. Like in Hong Kong, there's absolutely no resistance to women playing baseball because there's one baseball field in Hong Kong and nobody looks at it as like a man's sport. But it doesn't make it any easier to play baseball in Hong Kong because there's one field, but there's not that gender component, so different places have different issues. But yeah, and there are some women who take offense at everything, and I feel like they have probably been very wounded in their lives, and they're very defensive, and I have empathy for them too. And especially when they lash out at other women, because it's just a very difficult balancing act. And I was talking to a friend of mine who has an adult son. I think he's 24 or something, and she was a single mom, and he's doing the dating apps and the swiping and the rating of people, and he's like, yeah, I don't want to bother to get dressed and go out tonight for 7. And she's like, hold on.
Wow.
I did not raise you to be a douche. Like, what is happening? He goes, Mom, you have no idea. Like, if I try to open the door, I might get yelled at. I might not get yelled at. If I offer to pick her up, then maybe I'm an axe murderer and I'm gonna. He goes, you just don't know how hard it is out there. So they try to reduce it to these just real basic, like, have sex first, get that out of the way, and then try to have a conversation, or because all the other stuff is so difficult to navigate. And so you want to find a woman who's willing to have sex with you right away, and then maybe you'll go to dinner.
Grew up in the wrong era.
And I said, and she was just blown away by all this. And he's obviously struggling with this. This isn't who he wants to be. He's not comfortable with this. The women probably aren't comfortable with this. And we're letting these boxes run our lives for us and do what we think is popular or what we see on TV. And so I just said to her, I said, it may sound goofy, but if he doesn't know if he can open the door or if he should pay for dinner, he should ask. So, I mean, it's a little bit like the consent. Is it okay if I hold your hand? But once you get through that, once you say, I actually had a guy, and he said, I would like to take you on a date and I would like to pay for dinner. Is that okay with you? And then the date was great, because then neither one of us were stressing about, am I going to yell at him for reaching for the check? Is he going to look at me that I don't reach for the check? All of this misconception and drama we can eliminate by just saying, this is what I would like to do. Is that okay with you?
I don't think I've ever asked that before. I think I just assume I was paying.
Right. And there are some women that'll get offended because I can pay for my own dinner. And if you buy me dinner, does that mean I owe you something? And they don't want to be put in that position of beholdenness. And then I got to the point of dating in California where I'm like, I am sick of a man showing up in cargo shorts and flip-flops expecting me to split the check. I'm from New England. We put on real clothes for dates. And I'm not saying that a man should always pay. But it depends on, like, if you make 10 times what I make, why wouldn't you pay?
Right.
If I make more money than you make and you're okay with me paying, why wouldn't I pay? But you have to have the conversation, because everyone's experience and everyone's personality is different. And if you say, I mean, I had some people, well, we'll come and pick you up. And I'm like, what, it's the first date. I'll drive myself because, it's important to have your own car in case things are a nightmare. Well, I've let you know that I'm expecting that this might be kind of weird, but I'm hoping that it won't be, because I'm still going to come. You just have to talk.
Okay, so the big thing to get out of this, communication, and just
open your mouth and ask questions.
Don't be afraid. Great. I'm going to remember that. All right. Well, I thank you very much for being on the show. I hope you will I definitely want to have you back on again. That would be ridiculous not to have you back on. But thank you for coming, and I think this is my best podcast out of them all.
Hooray.
All
My
right.
pleasure. Entirely my pleasure.
All right, great. This has been Stories from the Set. Hope you enjoyed the episode.